In 30 BC, the fall of Cleopatra handed the Roman Empire a massive, wealthy new province. It also handed them a severe geographic constraint. Moving south down the Nile, the fertile floodplains of Egypt abruptly choke into a narrow, rocky corridor, starting at a geological boundary known as the First Cataract. This specific stretch of river, running between the First Cataract near modern Aswan and the Second Cataract further south, became Rome's new southern edge. When we look at historical maps today, we expect to see a continuous line severing one empire from another. We picture border walls and rigid military perimeters. In the ancient world, a frontier, or limes, was rarely a sharp edge. It operated as a medial area, a deep, overlapping zone characterized by cultural mixing, heavy trade, and highly porous boundaries. Two expanding powers claimed this specific medial zone, known as Lower Nubia. Rome viewed the corridor as a stepping stone for future conquests into Africa. The wealthy kingdom of Meroe, to the south, had dominated this exact territory for centuries. Governing this disputed corridor forced Rome into a strict mathematical trap. They had to balance the immense cost of supplying legions in a harsh desert against the actual economic output extracted from the region, a calculus historians call the economy of rule. Securing the stretch of Lower Nubia, known as the Trioncon Skoinos, the 30-mile land, required permanent military bases. However, provisioning thousands of troops in an arid, low-yield environment rapidly erased the financial benefit of holding it. Rome's first prefect of Egypt, Cornelius Gallus, attempted to bypass this cost in 29 BC. Rather than deploying legions, he installed a local client ruler, a tyrannos, to act as a Roman proxy. To sell this arrangement to his superiors, Gallus erected a trilingual monument at Philae. In the Latin text, written for Roman eyes, he boasted that he had brought the Meroitic king in tutelum recepto, under absolute Roman subjugation and protection. On the exact same monument, the Greek translation tells a completely different story. Aimed at the local population, the text claims Gallus established a proxenia, an official diplomatic friendship among equals. Gallus used this linguistic sleight of hand to claim total pacification of the border without actually committing the military infrastructure required to defend it. This administrative fiction satisfied politicians back in Rome, but it left the southern frontier structurally exposed. The system relied entirely on a bluff, leaving it highly vulnerable to any sudden shifts in troop deployments. By 27 BC, Gallus fell out of favor with Emperor Augustus, was recalled to Rome, and committed suicide, creating an immediate administrative vacuum on the frontier. Shortly after, the subsequent Roman prefect diverted massive troop contingents from Egypt for an expedition into Arabia Felix. The primary military deterrent on the Nubian border evaporated. Observing this massive withdrawal, the Meroitic queen Amanirenas seized the advantage. In the summer of 25 BC, she launched a heavy, preemptive strike north into the newly exposed Roman zone. Meroitic forces rapidly overran the proxy state. They pushed straight to the traditional Egyptian border, capturing the vital Roman strongholds at Syene, Philae, and Elephantine. Meroitic forces paired territorial conquests with ideological attacks. They tore down bronze statues of Augustus, literally dragging the emperor's image through the dirt. They hacked the head off one bronze statue, carried it south to their capital, and buried it beneath the threshold of a local shrine. Every time a Meroitic citizen walked into the temple, they stepped on the face of the Roman emperor. The sudden collapse of the Trioconta Shinos proved a harsh geopolitical reality. A frontier built on diplomatic translations and missing garrisons shatters immediately when tested by a well-organized adversary. Rome responded with overwhelming kinetic force. The newly appointed prefect, Gaius Petronius, immediately mobilized a rapid response force of 10,000 infantry and cavalry. Petronius engaged the Meroitic army and methodically drove them backward, clearing the invaders out of formal Egyptian territory. He then pressed his tactical advantage deep into Lower Nubia, establishing a heavily fortified Roman outpost at Qasr Ibrim. Marching his legions hundreds of kilometers further up the Nile, Petronius eventually reached and sacked the ancient Meroitic religious capital of Napata. Deep in Kushite territory, the legions found themselves in an alien landscape defined by harsh deserts and steep stone pyramids, isolated from Mediterranean supply lines. Sacking the city provided excellent material for Roman propagandists. Practically, it achieved zero strategic value for actual border security. The Roman forces were drastically overextended. Provisioning a permanent garrison across 270 kilometers of barren, hostile desert was a logistical impossibility. The Meroitic state absorbed the blow and adapted. Queen Amani-Renis regrouped her forces, marched back north, and laid siege to the isolated Roman garrison stationed at Qasr Ibrim. Rome's heavy infantry could win any pitched battle it fought. Their rigid economy of rule, however, dictated they could never afford to permanently hold the space they had just conquered. With the conflict locked in a costly stalemate, the venue shifted from the siege camps of Nubia to the diplomatic tables on the Greek island of Samos. In the winter of 21 BC, Meroitic envoys arrived to negotiate directly with Emperor Augustus. Augustus calculated that fighting a perpetual, low-intensity war at the southern edge of the empire was draining resources required in other provinces. Looking at the map of the Nile corridor, the emperor made a highly unusual decision for a Roman leader. He voluntarily retracted his own military border. Rome formally abandoned the sprawling, unmanageable 30-mile zone, ceding all deep territorial claims back to the kingdom of Meroe. In its place, they engineered a much tighter, highly specific buffer known as the Dodekashkoinos, or the 12-mile land. To ensure this new, condensed zone actually functioned, Augustus granted a massive economic concession. Meroites operating within the buffer would be entirely exempt from Roman poll taxes. The Treaty of Samos traded imperial ego for systemic stability. Augustus sacrificed land and tax revenue to purchase a sustainable mathematical baseline for his southern border. Rather than an empty demilitarized zone, the 12-mile land functioned as a highly active, integrated cultural membrane. The physical anchor of this system was the island temple complex of Philae. It operated simultaneously as a Roman administrative center and Meroitic pilgrimage site. The shared syncretic worship of the goddess Isis served as a diplomatic tether, binding the economic and religious interests of both empires into a single physical location. A pragmatic new power structure emerged. Local Nubian priests stepped into roles as district commissioners, managing civil disputes and acting as direct liaisons between Roman prefects and Meroitic royalty. By carefully aligning these incentives, the engineered buffer proved extraordinarily durable. It facilitated steady trade and maintained peace between Rome and Meroe for the next 2.5 centuries. The most durable borders in the ancient world were rarely the ones drawn with the thickest lines or defended by the highest walls. Cornelius Gallus attempted to secure the region using aggressive military posturing and deceptive treaties, and his system collapsed in less than a decade. Augustus integrated the local economy and shared religious infrastructure, and his system held for generations. True geopolitical security in Lower Nubia was achieved only when Rome stopped trying to build a barrier to keep rivals out and instead engineered a shared zone of interaction where peace simply paid better than war.